Did you know that the true power of faith doesn't reveal itself in times of peace, but in the face of the most impossible challenges? You've been told to wait for a miracle, but what if I told you that the miracle is already in your hands and you didn't realize it? In this video, you'll uncover the astonishing truth behind one of the most extraordinary events in the Bible. The day the Jordan River parted before a people filled with faith and obedience. But beware, what you're about to learn might challenge everything you thought you knew about God's power and His will for your life. Stay with me, because by the end, this revelation will transform the way you face your own Jordans. Join our community of faith and transformation. Like this video and subscribe so you won't miss our next inspiring lessons. Moses, the great leader of Israel, had led the people through the wilderness for 40 years. However, the time came when his mission was complete. With his death, a new era began for Israel. The nation, standing on the brink of the promised land, needed a strong leader to carry on God's mission. That leader was Joshua, the son of Nun, who had been Moses' close assistant and a witness to the miracles of the Lord. God spoke to Joshua, reaffirming his purpose and his promise. "My servant Moses is dead. Now arise, cross this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to the sons of Israel." Joshua 1:2. These words were not only a command, but also a confirmation that the mission was far from over. Though Joshua might have felt the heavy weight of responsibility, God strengthened him with words of hope and authority. "No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you." Joshua 1:5. These words assured Joshua that God's presence would always be with him. But God also exhorted him, "Be strong and courageous." Joshua 1:6. Joshua's mission would not be easy, but it was backed by divine power. The people, eager to enter the promised land, looked to Joshua as their new leader. The question now was, how would they cross the mighty Jordan River? The answer lay in fully trusting the Lord, who had an extraordinary plan to guide his people. With a clear mission and divine support, Joshua began preparing the nation for the great challenge ahead, crossing the Jordan River and claiming the promised land. But before they took that step, there was one fundamental requirement. The people had to sanctify themselves. Joshua addressed the tribal leaders and proclaimed, "Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you." Joshua 3:5. Sanctification wasn't just a ritual act. It represented a purification of the heart and a complete willingness to follow God's will. This call to holiness reflected the nature of Israel's God, holy and deserving of complete obedience. Every man, woman, and child in the camp understood they needed to be spiritually prepared to witness God's power. Additionally, Joshua instructed the priests, who were responsible for carrying Israel's most sacred object, the Ark of the Covenant. "Take up the Ark of the Covenant and go ahead of the people," Joshua commanded. Joshua 3:6. The Ark, a tangible symbol of God's presence, would lead the people at this crucial moment. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation and reverence. The people understood that what was about to happen was not the work of men, but of God. Crossing the Jordan would be a divine demonstration that the Lord fulfills His promises and remains faithful to His covenant. The next day, as the people watched intently, Joshua received direct instructions from the Lord, who said, "This day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, so that they may know that just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you." Joshua 3:7. These words not only reaffirmed Joshua's authority as a leader, but also announced that God was about to perform a miracle that would mark a new chapter in Israel's history. God gave Joshua precise instructions. When the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant set foot in the Jordan's waters, they will stop and stand up in a heap. Joshua 3:13. This command, though extraordinary, was received with faith by Joshua, the priests, and the people. They knew that the same God who parted the Red Sea for Moses would now manifest himself again. Joshua, filled with confidence, relayed these words to the people. "This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out the Canaanites, Hittites, and other nations before you." Joshua 3:10. The miracle would not only signify God's presence, but also serve as a guarantee that he would fulfill his promise to give them the land. As the priests approached the Jordan with the ark, the people held their breath, waiting to see how the living God would act on their behalf. At the critical moment, the priests, carrying the Ark of the Covenant, stepped firmly onto the banks of the Jordan. It was harvest season, and the Jordan was overflowing, with its waters rushing powerfully. Joshua 3:15. Despite this, the priests did not waver. They knew that obedience to God was the key to unlocking the promised miracle. When the priests' feet touched the water, the unimaginable happened. The river's waters, flowing from upstream, suddenly stopped and piled up in a heap a great distance away, at a place called Adam, near Zarethan. Joshua 3:16. The rest of the water flowed down toward the Dead Sea, leaving the Jordan's riverbed completely dry. The people of Israel watched with awe and reverence as the path opened before them. It wasn't just a natural phenomenon, it was divine intervention that confirmed God's presence among them. This miracle, as powerful as the parting of the Red Sea in Moses' time, made it clear that the Lord was still the same faithful and almighty God. Under Joshua's guidance, the people began crossing the river on dry ground. Not a single person was left behind. Families crossed together, carrying the hope of a new life in the Promised Land. Meanwhile, the priests stood firm in the middle of the Jordan, holding the ark as a visible testimony that it was God who was making the way. The crossing was not only an act of faith, but also a moment of national unity. Every step they took on the dry riverbed was a declaration of trust in God's promises. This miracle strengthened the people's faith, reminding them that the Lord always fulfills his word. When everyone had safely crossed, the priests remained in their position, awaiting further instructions from God. It was evident that this event not only marked the beginning of a new chapter for Israel, but also established Joshua as a leader chosen and supported by the Almighty. With the people of Israel completely on the other side of the Jordan, God spoke to Joshua again. This time, he gave an instruction to ensure that this miracle would never be forgotten. Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and command them to take 12 stones from the place where the priests are standing in the Jordan. Carry them over with you and set them down at the place where you will stay tonight. Joshua 4:2-3. The stones were not mere objects. They were a physical testament to God's power and his faithfulness to his people. Joshua obeyed and selected one man from each tribe, representing the entire nation of Israel. These men returned to the dry riverbed, where the priests still stood holding the ark, and collected the stones under the reverent gaze of the people. Once the stones were transported to the camp, Joshua explained their meaning. "These stones will be a memorial for you. When your children ask in the future, 'What do these stones mean?' you will tell them that the waters of the Jordan stopped in front of the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord." Joshua 4:6-7. This memorial would not only serve as a reminder of this miracle for future generations, but also inspire them to trust the Lord in their own challenges. Furthermore, Joshua set up another set of 12 stones in the very riverbed of the Jordan, at the spot where the priests had stood firm. Joshua 4:9. This second memorial would be a hidden yet eternal symbol of the miracle that occurred that day. With the stones placed and the people settled on the western bank of the Jordan, the priests finally came out of the river. At that moment, the waters returned to their course, filling the river with its usual strength. The miracle of crossing the Jordan was etched into Israel's collective memory as a lasting reminder of the power and faithfulness of the God who had led them this far. The miraculous crossing of the Jordan River not only marked a milestone in Israel's journey to the Promised Land, but was also a pivotal moment in affirming Joshua as a leader. As the Lord had promised, this event exalted Joshua in the eyes of all Israel, establishing him as Moses' rightful successor. That day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they revered him just as they had revered Moses all the days of his life. Joshua 4:14. The people, who had closely observed Joshua's every step during this journey, recognized that his leadership was supported by the same God who had guided Moses. Joshua's obedience to divine instructions and the faith he demonstrated in every decision reflected his deep trust in the Lord. Moreover, this miracle reaffirmed that God's presence continued to accompany his people. The Jordan did not part through human strength or military strategies, but by divine power, unleashed through faith and obedience. This recognition strengthened the unity of the people under Joshua's guidance and renewed their trust in God's purpose. As Israel moved toward the Promised Land, they knew Joshua was God's chosen leader, a man of strength and courage who walked in obedience to the Lord. The crossing of the Jordan was etched not only in the memorial stones, but also in the hearts of every Israelite as a reminder of God's eternal covenant with them. The crossing of the Jordan was not just a historical event, but also an eternal spiritual lesson. This miracle demonstrates that when God's people obey with faith, He makes a way where there seems to be none. For Israel, the Jordan represented an insurmountable obstacle. For God, it was an opportunity to showcase His power and faithfulness. In our lives too, we face Jordans, impossible situations, challenges that seem immovable. This story reminds us that God can create a path in the midst of our difficulties, but it requires faith and obedience from us. Like the priests who dared to step into the waters before seeing the miracle, we must take steps of trust, knowing that God will fulfill His promises. The 12 stones that Joshua and the people erected teach us the importance of remembering God's miracles and faithfulness. In a world that easily forgets, we need reminders of what God has done in our lives to strengthen our faith and that of future generations. Today, as we reflect on this story, we are called to trust the living God, the same God who parted the Jordan, and to walk with the assurance that He is guiding us toward His eternal purpose. The crossing of the Jordan River was not just a miracle for the people of Israel, but a powerful lesson for you today. What obstacles in your life need God to make a way? What you've heard today is not just history. It's an invitation to activate your faith and step boldly toward God's promises. But this is not the end of the story. There is much more to learn and apply to transform your spiritual life and face your challenges with God's power. So don't stop here. Like this video, share this message with someone who needs it, and tell us in the comments how this teaching impacted your life. Most importantly, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next videos full of inspiration and transformation. This is just the beginning of an incredible journey together.